I'm here today with Ric Merrifield of Rethink, a new book that's just out. You can find it on Amazon and all your favorite places.
That's right.
Thank you, Ric, for taking time to speak with me about your book.
Thank you very much for coming.
And my name is Braden Kelley with blogginginnovation.com. So, Ric, just to start, I just wanted to ask you, first question would be, what inspired you to write Rethink?
Well, so I've been doing the same basic work here for 6 years, and as it started, we realized that it really is a different way of looking at work, and so we built a methodology to reach out to some customers and had some really great results, both with cost cutting and with innovation. And as it built momentum, we realized that we need to find new ways to scale it. And so a book was a great way to get the message out. It includes a lot of method in it so that people can rethink their work.
And what is the key insight that you want to share with this book? What is the key insight that you want to push out there with this book and get people thinking and considering?
Well, the core idea of the book, the unifying principle, as they say, is what I call the how trap. And it's something that I've come to realize is a totally human condition that we all fall into. And I talk about how most of us have had the experience of you drive to a favorite restaurant and you start to associate the route you take with the restaurant, so much so that when somebody does it a different way, you say, why are we going this way? It usually doesn't matter how you get there as long as you accomplish the outcome of getting to the restaurant in a timely manner. And so then I used some other fun examples like Dick Fosbury, who did the Fosbury flop in the Olympics and got an Olympic gold medal by literally going backwards over the bar in the high jump, as opposed to people who used to jump right over it like a hurdle. Totally rethought. All he had to do, the outcome was getting over the bar, and he figured out a better way to do it. But more practical examples in the business world of this how trap, getting back to the fax machine example, if you walk up to somebody who's sending a fax and ask them, say, what are you doing? They're likely to say, I'm sending a fax, and kind of give you a funny look for asking what may seem like a silly question. And if I'm a process person or even a technology person understanding the process, the workflow, or the requirements, and I ask that person a follow-up question to say, so is sending a fax a necessary step in the flow of work that you do to do your job? And if I ask the question like that, there's a good chance the person's going to say yes. And so if I'm writing down business requirements, I'm going to say, okay, sending a fax is a requirement, which is a mistake. And I know, regardless of what industry they're in, I know that's not what they're doing. The what they're doing in my language, in the language of the book, is something more like confirming status, communicating an order. Those are what verbs, and a how verb is a fact. So if I can go back to that user and say, okay, if what you're doing is communicating status, and how you're doing is with a fax machine, I've disentangled the what and the how in a very non-threatening way to the end user. And as I write down my requirements, I capture the requirement is communicate status, but then I can test whether that how is relevant to the what, and it can do that, and it becomes a very different lens for all of the discussions you have about work. And you start to see all of these opportunities and say, does it matter how I'm doing this today? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it matters who the person is, sometimes it matters the specific sequence of steps in the process, and sometimes the technology matters, but often it doesn't. And the other example I love to use is checking in for a flight at the airport now, which there are three whats that really happen there that we were familiar with. You're confirming your reservation, that's usually done with getting a boarding card, you're conducting a survey, and then you're doing some logistics if you've got luggage. And so we now literally know that a lot of the work is now done. They've outsourced the work to us, the customer, when we use the kiosk and the web. So it doesn't matter who does it anymore. It doesn't matter where it happens. We could be in a hotel room, we could be in our car, we could be at the kiosk, or we can still talk to the airline employee. We have no idea what the technology is. It's probably great technology. And so it can happen anywhere in the world. You don't have to be at the airport anymore to check in for a flight. And so asking those questions, does it matter how we do these things, and getting to the outcome of confirming your reservation, conducting a survey, and in that case the logistics, really is a fun way to ask where it does and doesn't matter. And in the book we also help people draw these diagrams we call heat maps, so you can see not just the individual piece of work like sending a fax, but seeing the overall block of work, all of the what's that make up whatever it is. So you can say, does this one thing relate to the performance of the overall, or is it just a commodity necessary step like checking in for a flight at the airport that has to be there, it has to perform at a certain level, but doesn't really merit any real investment if we're looking to drive increased performance in this case.
And what are some of the most common mistakes people are making in cost-cutting mode right now in the recession?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there are a couple of big mistakes I'm seeing that, for a lot of organizations, we've all been in growth mode for so long. part of being in growth mode is just keeping up with the growth. And when you do that, you tolerate certain inefficiencies and sort of fat just sort of working its way into the operating model. And say, yeah, well, we'll get to that when we have time to slow down. But it's sort of, we're too busy chopping wood to stop and sharpen our axe right now. And so one mistake is underestimating just how much fat and redundancy there is in organizations. And we see people sort of get out their sandpaper and expect to find a little here and a little there.
Right.
We tell people now it's at least 20 to 40% of your operating model is probably worth looking at and considering either repetitive work that can be consolidated as a best practice, either in terms of process or technology, or just fat that's not necessary, that's not cleanly pointed at what the real goals of the organization are. Other big mistake that I see people make, and this is, I think, always been true, people think of cost cutting and innovation as mutually exclusive. And what the reality is, you can get much greater cost cutting if you apply an innovation lens to the cost cutting opportunity. There's an example I use in the book with ING Direct, which is the all online retail bank. They don't let people write paper checks, which is a hassle for some people, and that's too bad. But what that allows ING Direct to do is to not have an entire department for dealing with bounced checks, which is a huge cost cutter for them, and it's a very big expense for other banks. And so that kind of really transformational way of interacting with customers, outsourcing work to customers, which we have with the airport check-in, with the ATM. ING Direct does a lot of the customers have to do their own banking. That's another way to cut costs while you're innovating, while you're getting a richer connection to your customer.
What are some of the most common barriers to innovation that you see when you're out doing your work?
Well, there are a couple there. So one of the mistakes that I see people making when they talk about innovation is not defining it. Some people I see, in my opinion, confuse innovation with creativity, that it's just sort of a lightning striking thing and it'll happen. Innovation to me is just like cost cutting in the sense that you need to you should be asking the question at every business problem or opportunity you have. You say, because the way I define innovation, I say you can make a slight change, sort of like the sandpaper. A minor change in performance is just a change. You may undertake a more major project to still change the work. Innovating the work, it will, when it's finished, it doesn't resemble what was there before. It's so different. That's what an innovation is. So checking in for a flight over the web is an innovative way to accomplish the three objectives that we talked about. It doesn't resemble the experience of going to the counter and talking to the airline employee. The ATM is another example where they outsource the work to the customer in an innovative way, so the bank location doesn't matter anymore. And so having that every time you look at a problem to say, do I just need to change to get the performance that I need, a slight operational improvement? Do I need to undertake a larger sort of project, whether it's just like sending a fax, a little thing, you can innovate at the sending a fax level, which is kind of like the airport check-in level, or at the overall operating model, like a Netflix, totally transform the video rental business, or ING Direct, the only online bank. And so looking at that and say, whether you're creating a new operating model, or responding to competitive pressure, or just trying to improve sending a fax, say, does it make sense for us to look at innovation in this particular situation, and what kind of return am I going to get for that?
What recent innovation or area of innovation has the most intriguing potential?
Well, I think that we're in the day one of a 100-year journey of social networking, and that social networking at the individual social level as consumers, the Facebook and Twitter sort of discussion, that's going to lead to a lot of really interesting and innovative ways. I think there'll be a lot of referral discussions going on in those social networks. And you'll see things like with eBay, you've got this sort of the trusted ranking of how trusted you are for selling things in eBay. And I think we'll start to see those same sorts of trustworthiness things. So if I refer my book to you, if I have referred a bunch of other books, then and I've been rated for that, then I'm a trustworthy person for referring. And I think we'll see similar things in business. There's a group called the Institute for Corporate Productivity that's more of a business social network that engages businesses to talk to each other. And I think all of that sort of a new way of engaging beyond just email in a way that is value added and fun and interesting to people, I think is going to transform both the consumer and the business world in ways that we can't even imagine yet. And I think that's really exciting.
Well, I look forward to seeing how that evolves over time.
Yeah.
And thank you, Rick, for the time. The book again is Rethink by Ric Merrifield. And I am, again, Braden Kelley of blogginginnovation.com.